Story is about regret, Pharaoh's regret, moving him into trouble. One of the things that I think of when I think of this story is Psalm 77, which has this, I don't know, we'll call it a cosmic significance. It's like the story about the people of Israel in Egypt and the Passover is kind of personal. You know, it's a plague that happened to this group of people in this particular place and time. But I wonder if this story doesn't add a cosmic dimension, because I think you're right about the fact that Pharaoh had regret yet again. And so the story carries us into this place where not only does God meet that regret with plague, but God shows an enormous amount of power, a different kind of power than just the ability to bring a disease to a group of people. So I've said a lot over the years that I've been here about water in the Old Testament. In the Hebrew Scriptures, water defines chaos. You know, in the beginning, when God created the heavens and the earth was a formless void, and darkness covered over the face of the deep, and a wind from God spread over the waters. You know, those waters are that chaotic nightmare, that thing that swallows things up. And creation itself is bringing the waters into some form and shape. So I think that's what's added in this text, in this story, that it's more, we're looking at a God that is more than a God that can sort of locally pull some strings and make things happen, but we're also looking at a God that has the ability to control all of creation. See what I mean? It's just bigger. If it's a cosmic God, where did you notice God was in this story? So if the frame is all of creation, God was in several places in this story. The Lord, Adonai, was in several places. Where did we see God's presence? Okay.
And that certainly ties into what you were saying about creation and the water representing chaos. And then God also orders a chaos that overwhelms the Egyptians.
Alrighty, so God is in the movement of nature there, and God is, but God. I mean, all through this. So, and you're right, he's definitely in nature. He's also using the humans. Okay. A human. So he's using Moses to speak to other humans. Is that the only human he dealt with?
No.
Right. This God apparently dealt with Pharaoh too. Right? Has that ever bothered you, this text? You know, the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart to kind of, you know, and the Lord even tricked him here. I mean, if you have the geography, I'll just tell you, you know, the Israelites were going away from Egypt, and it's like God told them to turn around, okay, and come back this direction, almost like taunting Pharaoh. You know, bring it around over to here, and let's see if we can't draw Pharaoh into this mess. You know, so that I can look good. There is an odd sort of feeling about that. Yeah. Oh, I love my wife's face when she does that. You know, but let's take it out of the cosmic, you know, the cosmic bellhop, the puppeteer. You know, if we're going to say that we see God in the midst of a hard heart, and we see God in the midst of the voice of Moses. We see God in the midst of the waters parting. Where else did we see God in this story? The Israelites knew where to go through a pillar of fire and a pillar of cloud. And I just noticed in this reading of the story, and I mean literally this reading when I was reading it, that God looked down, the Lord looked down from the pillar of fire and the pillar of cloud. Just know there was an angel that apparently was bringing the light, all right, in this pillar of fire, and then there was this cloud that was this mystery that surrounded God. And it's a mysterious light that guides and leads the people. That's kind of cool. I mean, does that adequately describe how God leads you? It's pretty mysterious, you know, because the footprints are never seen. You get nudged forward. All right, remember last week's sermon about, or 2 weeks ago, about the burning bush. Moses gets this call from God to go free the Israelites. And Moses wants to know, how will I know you're sending me? And God says, well, when you get back to this mountain, then you'll know. Well, he's not back yet. So you just picture these people just kind of blindly moving forward. They've got this light bringing them the next step, you know, and then protecting them. So God's in the nature, God's in the water, God's within Moses, God's within Pharaoh. It's like this permeating God throughout all creation. And where is God not in this story might be a better question. But the other thing that's true about this God of creation, so you get a sense that not of the puppeteer God, but this God that is in creation, with creation, under creation. How do you describe it? I don't know how to describe it, just, you know, touching creation but not touching creation. You know, this particular God brings a new thing about on this day. Because we had the chaos of water, and instead what came out of it was a people who were free. Right? So people that weren't free go into this, and they come out the other side. Now, if you were the people of Israel in the story, are you surprised? Personally, I'm shocked. Are the Egyptians surprised? Yeah, they're surprised. And isn't that the way creation moves forward? Isn't there always something that surprises us? And that's the beauty of this God, is that we think within these narrow confines of what exists right now, the way things work right now. And God creates using novelty. My favorite example of that is, you have 2 hydrogen atoms out there. We're talking, 13.68 billion years ago. You have a couple of hydrogen atoms and an oxygen atom. Okay? And you could predict that those 2 things would come together if you studied them enough. The valences are such that they should connect and form a molecule. But how could you possibly have predicted the property of flow and wetness? I mean, that's a surprise. That's a novelty. That's God taking the constituent parts and putting them together and making it something that surprises you. It seems to be the nature of God. But I guess there's one more thing that I'd ask of this text. If God is in creation, moving in creation, working in people, working in their frustrations, working in their fears, working through all of that stuff, What direction is God moving? God is always moving in the direction of freedom. And what I like about this, maybe the key verse for me today, is that God is moving that direction no matter what. God is moving that way in your life. Frankly, whether you want God to or not. It's just the nature of things. You know what you have to do to get God to move in that direction? Keep still. It's God that's moving these things. And I'm not sure we remember that, or we let that fill us as much as we might. I think it might reduce some of our anxieties. What have you been worried about this week? I won't make you raise your hand on that one. You know, I've got a list. I worry about economic times. I try to push it off. I try to feel secure. I have a reasonably secure job, I hope. That's, of course, up to all you. I have a secure job. I have a wonderful house. But I still worry about money. Will there be enough later in my life? You have those worries, right? I worry about money. I worry about the stability of our world and it sort of devolving into huge amounts of violence. I mean, really, every time I read the paper, it scares me. And it scares me more when I hear our politicians start to talk. Right, left doesn't seem to matter to me. It scares me more because I'm not hearing a great deal of wisdom. I'm not hearing people taking a step back, taking, let's say, a cosmic view of the direction that God might be taking the world. Instead, I see people embedded in the fear and the anxiety and in the fights and the struggles of the world. It seems to me as though this text would suggest that there needs to be a certain amount of stillness from our leaders. And let's not blame it on the leaders. That's awfully easy. Because in spite of the fact that we hear all the time that money is what actually makes elections run around, there isn't an ad around that can make me pull a lever. No such thing. All it requires us to do is vote for somebody that has something to say, that appears to be able to take that step back look. So let's not just leave it to our leaders. In any case, I worry about it. I think probably people come to church because they worry about all these things, right? I've heard, actually not in this room, but in the other room in the last, month and a half, 2 months, I've heard people articulate, I come to church not to be challenged, but to be comforted. And coming to church to be comforted seems to me a wonderful thing to do, but that comfort needs to have some realistic foundation, right? You don't want to tell people, oh, everything's going to be all right. God will take care of you. It's going to turn out the way you want, when you know perfectly well that may not be true. And so I'm not all that helpful when people come for comfort, I guess. And I sometimes have anxiety about the church at large, not just this church, but the church at large. I think we're missing the boat. I think we tend to stay with old language, and people have rejected us, and we're somehow not able to get our message out to the world around us. And that concerns me. It concerns me that we're heading into a pledge drive during hard economic times, after a capital campaign, no less. But then I begin to think about the things that are going on around me. In fairly short order, we're going to get to work on the renovations. And that's both going to give us a sense of new life here, and it's going to give us a decent sound system in the sanctuary. That'll be nice. We'll have our physical plant in shape. And that's one of the steps we need to be able to serve the world around us. We have a fabulous kids program in place. We don't have to build it. Got nothing to make. It's right there. Ready to be used. It's being used by some, not that many. We have an amazing music program that gets better and better all the time. Now, you folks in this room have had an amazing music program for a long, long time, Thank you, John. Especially for this morning. But in our other room, new life because there's new staff. And that's William.